Shove It Man!
Alright, it's the leader of the Shove It squad and the one who makes your girl nod. Robert Roode is perhaps one of the greatest homegrown stars that TNA has ever produced. He stands on a rare platform with the likes of AJ Styles and Samoa Joe. Unfortunately, Roode has never returned back to TNA since leaving all that time ago, and after a period of inactivity in WWE, fans were clamouring for his return to TNA, which unfortunately won't ever happen. If you've seen his recent interview, you'll know why. With that in mind, I decided it was a good idea to make a tribute to his TNA career, which isn't going to be easy, as he was in that company for 12 damn years. So I've tried my best to hit his main career milestones and highlights, but I just want to say how much fun it was watching this stuff back and seeing the rise of the man from a nobody to a main eventer. Today's video was also a Patreon request by Mr. Adrian Powell. If you want to make the Hawk talk, sign up today. Okay, it's Robert, don't call me Roode. When he was in TNA, he was probably getting screwed. Roode's wrestling career began in his native Canada, originally receiving training from Val Venus, and the two remain good friends. He also had training from Shane Sewell, who TNA fans will be familiar with. Roode worked televised matches for the WWE a surprising amount in 2002 and 2003, except he wasn't Robert or Bobby, he was Rudy Roode. Unfortunately for him, he never got a victory and he never got a WWE contract. They must have been real close to offering him a deal because he worked about 12 matches for them. Roode has described this period of his career as something that needed to happen for him to make a name for himself. He also said that Val Venus was watching all his matches and forcing anybody important backstage to watch and critique him. So it's cool that Val looks after his student. A couple of months after his final WWE Velocity appearance, he signed with TNA. He was taken to the company by fellow Canadian Scott D'Amore, who Roode had wrestled for in Canada on occasion. Roode was instantly added to Scott D'Amore's TNA faction Team Canada. He would become known as the Canadian enforcer Bobby Roode, alongside Eric Young, Petey Williams and Johnny Devine. There isn't a whole lot to say about this period of time. His partners were smaller than him, which made him stand out more. It seemed like they were going to turn him into a singles wrestler early on, as Scott D'Amore almost kicked Roode out of the group for some losses, but ultimately no, that didn't happen. He also gradually grew his hair out from his WWE days, which I'd say was an improved look for him. They did have a very impressive win-loss record because they cheated to win most of their matches. Scott D'Amore mostly hit people with a flag hockey stick. Their main feud would be of America's Most Wanted, Chris Harris and James Storm. After 8 months, Roode captured his first TNA gold as he and Eric Young were able to beat Daniels and Storm for the tag belts. Unfortunately, this was a period where TNA played hot potato with the tag titles. Team Canada lost the belts to Free Live Crew on TNA's first proper pay-per-view after only 1 month. But don't fear, my little friends, because Team Canada won the belts back a month later on the next pay-per-view. Then they lost them a month after that to America's Most Wanted. It's like TNA couldn't make up their damn minds who they wanted to run with. 2005 was a real year of growth for Bobby Roode as he had to get through some less than stellar singles matches and sit under the learning tree. A 2 out of 3 Falls cage match with Dustin Rhodes wasn't exactly impressive. At the time, his finisher was a clothesline from behind, which he named the Northern Lariat. It was fine, I guess, but it never really got over as a serious finisher. Team Canada was a real fixture of TNA in that early era. They were the perfect lower card foreign heels. They got their heat, they could all wrestle well, and they were all young and hungry. Despite that, Team Canada are essentially just used as henchmen by a wild slapnuts appears.
Jeff Jarrett.
They became part of his super faction, Planet Jarrett. And when I say super, I don't mean it was really good. I mean it was super big and super pointless. That's enough about Team Canada. It's time for Roode to do something on his own. Team Canada were forced to disband, and I think this segment where they're disbanded is very telling of Roode's future in TNA and what their eventual plans would be for him. D'Amore called him the greatest athlete in TNA history, told him that it was time to focus on number 1, and it was only a matter of time until he became a world champion. Roode didn't wrestle any matches for the next 3 months as he started a new chapter in his career. He was now referring to himself as the hottest free agent in wrestling. Different managers tried to make him offers whilst hyping up Roode as the next main eventer in TNA. Looking back, this hype was a bit ridiculous. He hadn't actually beaten anyone of note to be getting this sort of hype. Why did they think he'd be the next main eventer just because he kind of looked good? He hadn't offered any evidence. There was actually a few weeks of television where famous wrestling managers of the past came into TNA to talk to Bobby Roode. Bobby Heenan offered Roode houses and money if he could manage him. Colonel Robert Parker offered him nothing but words and advice. Sherry Martel reminded Roode that behind every strong man is a strong woman, but apparently she wasn't strong enough because instead he decided to hire Tracy Brooks as his manager and started referring to his operations as Robert Roode Enterprises. Oh yeah, and he wasn't Bobby now, he was instead Robert. Don't worry, Bobby would be back. He was apparently also a stock trader on Wall Street. I never saw any evidence of this, I guess it was a JBL gimmick. And he had the fitting catchphrase of "it pays to be rude." Unfortunately, Roode got completely distracted from his goal of becoming a main event heavyweight champion, as instead he was more interested in trying to find ways to become more popular with the fans. He was jealous of his former Team Canada member Eric Young, as he was more popular than Roode was. After his manager Ms. Brooks lost the Keeney contest to Eric Young, Roode was now adamant that Robert Roode Enterprises must sign Eric Young to a contract. This all dragged on for a while. An evil plot was formed between Roode and Brooks. The plan to get him to sign was Tracy Brooks promising that she'd take Eric's virginity if he signed with Robert Roode. Yes, it was a very Russo-esque storyline, but at least it gave us the hilarious skit of EY visiting a shop to buy extra small condoms. He did eventually sign with Robert Roode Enterprises, as Tracy laughed in his face and said she would never sleep with him in 1,000 years. And honestly, although this whole storyline really helped Roode grow as a heel and get more comfortable on the microphone, and he was excellent in this role, he had some really great verbal sparring sessions with TNA management Jim Cornette. But the problem is the whole Don't Fire Eric storyline just went on for way too long. 9 months for a mid-card storyline is a bit over the top. Perhaps the main highlight was Eric Young fighting back against Roode thanks to advice from a mystery man. The mystery man turned out to be good old Slappy. Roode had a singles match with Slappy on pay-per-view, and he actually beat him, giving Roode his biggest single victory at this point of his career. Eventually, Eric Young beat Roode to free himself from the situation. Roode flirted around the mid-card after this and took his frustrations out on Ms. Brooks by bullying and humiliating her. A woman was often seen in the crowd described as Robert Roode's #1 fan. This was another thing that dragged on for a very long time. It wasn't revealed for 3 months who this woman was, and also Tracy Brooks putting up with Roode's dickish actions lasted a long time. Apparently her mum was ill and Tracy had to stay with Roode to be able to afford her healthcare. At the same time as this was going on, Roode was having a feud with Booker T. This kind of demonstrates his rise up the card. On pay-per-view, Miss Brooks and Roode finally exploded, and Roode accidentally told Sharmell, "Shut up or I'll smack you one." Roode accidentally smacking out Booker T's wife got some great heat from the crowd. This led to the woman in the crowd who was Roode's stalker finally revealing herself as Peyton Banks, and she replaced Tracy as Roode's manager. It didn't really go very well for Peyton in TNA, and she wasn't there for long. They tried to turn her into a bit of a clone of Ms. Brooks. It basically went the same way for her, Roode bullying and humiliating her. Roode and Booker traded wins on pay-per-view. Roode was now on his own for the first time in his career, but this would only last a matter of months. Around this time, Roode had often teamed up with Cowboy James Storm.
She just poured beer all over me!
I don't care. Do you know who that is? That's Miss Jackie. She's a veteran. You don't treat veterans like that. You don't talk down to people like that. Do you see Robert Roode talking to people like that?
Yes.
Do me a favor. For once in your pathetic life, do something right tonight.
These two guys were in a similar situation as they both had sort of hit a glass ceiling. They both obviously had talent, they'd both been in loads of feud and had TV time, but they weren't quite main event level yet. TNA management decided to randomly throw them together as a team, officially starting in June 2008. They soon got the name Beer Money Inc. by combining the two characters' favourite things. Jacqueline was originally their manager, as she had been managing Storm prior to the team with Roode. They were both sort of opposing characters, as Storm was a laid-back drunk and Roode was a snobby heel, but for some reason the team worked. I'm not going to recount the entirety of the Beer Money tag team because honestly they did so much. For the next year and a half they went on a real tear, winning the tag belts 3 times and becoming a real reason to tune into TNA. Hell, they were a young Hawks favourite team. Their popularity turned them face and it just felt fitting. It didn't matter that Roode still wasn't a main eventer because this whole thing just felt natural and not like he was being forced into the scene like when he first left Team Canada years earlier. They had loads of people talk him up as a main eventer, but they didn't have any evidence. Now he was just having fun and being him. These guys earned their place in the company history. I think it helped that they were just believable characters. It felt like they were being them. They liked to win their matches with beer bottles and their tag team finisher the DWI, drinking whilst investing. Once 2010 hit, the team found that their TV time was drastically cut, with the Hogan and Bischoff regime preferring other talents. They were relegated to just being pointless henchmen for Bischoff in 2-minute matches. Halfway through 2010, lots of the lumber brought in by Hogan and Bischoff had left TNA, and Beer Money started to be featured again.
You guys are just a mismatch. I mean, you're a moron and you're an asshole. Like oil and water. Jekyll and Hyde. Like Lacey Von Erich and that perverted little midget. This may be a little off the subject, but why is your hair always frickin' wet?
They aligned themselves with Ric Flair, who was looking to recreate the Four Horsemen. He wanted Roode and Storm as they reminded him of Anderson and Blanchard. They were a good fit in the group. It felt like friends hanging out with their crazy granddad. And of course drinking when Storm would ice Ric Flair. It was around this time that Beer Money started their famous Best of 5 series with the Motor City Machine Guns. All the matches were great fun, and it was two teams at the top of their games. It was kind of nice to see some crazy in-ring action alongside all the gaga going on in TNA at the time. Despite Beer Money losing this series, there was only winners here. Eventually, Fortune joined Immortal to form one big super faction, and then the fun stopped. There was good news at the start of 2011 as Beer Money managed to capture their 4th tag team title. After only a few months, Fortune turned on Immortal, which is a really underrated moment in the history of TNA, and it's also a key moment for Bobby Roode, because his career was about to take off. He immediately cut a raging promo at Slapnuts about all the inconsistencies and problems in TNA with shoot elements. It was cool because you'd think AJ Styles would be the de facto leader of this group due to his main event status, but no, Roode became the mouthpiece. These promos lasted for the next couple of months. Roode would even go on to threaten Hogan on the mic, which we all know was the main person he needed to impress. The promos highlighted a lot of issues with TNA that people have been discussing about Hogan trying to get rid of all the people who got TNA where it was now. It was just cool to see someone getting one over on the Hulkster.
We are the heart and the soul of TNA wrestling, and deep down inside, you know that's the truth. But yet, week after week and month after month, Jeff, we would walk into the locker room and we'd look around and we'd see the new face, our savior, the guy who is overpaid and overpriced, all the while looking over the true talent that built this company, the backbone. Look at me. You don't like me. You don't like Fortune. Why don't you just shut your mouth? You grow a set and do something about it. Slap nuts. Half of America are blue-collar workers, and they know exactly what I'm talking about because they're proud of the fact that they earn their keep. What the hell have you earned, Hulk Hogan?
Who the hell do you think you are?
You haven't earned anything, Hulk. The only thing that you've done in the last 18 months is rape and steal from my wrestling company. You ruined people's lives, Hulk. You ruined people's lives. You fired Jay Lethal. You fired a good friend of mine. Jay Lethal, a warrior that would come to work each and every week, and he would be proud of the fact that he wrestled in this company. And I am the man who's going to stand up to you, you selfish son of a bitch.
At Lockdown, Team Fortune beat Team Immortal when Roode tapped out Ric Flair with an armbar, so the cool moments kept coming for a young Roode. Beer Money also set the record at the time for holding the tag belts for 212 days before being beaten by Mexican America, Super Mex Hernandez, and a cheap, cheesy version of Chavo Guerrero. Roode wasn't too upset about this though, because he was doing well in a tournament called the Bound for Glory series. Beer Money were still a team, but they decided that they both deserved a shot at the world title, so they entered this singles competition. Storm did quite well too, but not quite well enough. Roode actually ended up winning this series to earn a world heavyweight title match at Bound for Glory. And the champion, the final boss, it was of course Perk Angle. Angle was a dick and made Roode face each of his friends with a shot on the line. Roode beat them all. The match against Storm was of course hyped up the most, and I remember being really excited to see Roode versus Storm. But no, Bobby Roode beat him fair and square. They did such a great job with this. They made a huge deal out of Bobby winning the series and regularly had legends talk him up. He was often seen with Sting. This was just not seen as a throwaway match. Everyone who had followed the tournament was behind Bobby Roode, and they were excited to see a new TNA guy win the world title. Which is why at Bound for Glory 2011, when Roode was unsuccessful at capturing the title and beating Kurt Angle, everyone was livid. Yes, Angle cheated to win, but this just didn't make any sense. They had gone to insane levels of building Bobby Roode up for months leading up to this. Fans were threatening to quit watching TNA and they were really pissed off. Everyone wanted Roode to win and give us someone new at the top of the company. TNA were idiots. Well, soon, those people who said that would have to eat those words. TNA manager Sting realised Angle was a dick and decided to give James Storm a title shot at Angle on Impact. Nobody really thought too much of this. It had no build, it was on Impact, and Storm wasn't the guy they'd been telling us was the guy to watch for the last 6 months. The match lasts about 20 seconds when an overly confident Kurt Angle turns around into a superkick and James Storm captures the world title before Bobby Roode. I especially like the celebrations because James Storm offers to hand the belt over to Roode because he feels like he deserves it more. Roode says no, but because they were the best of buds, James Storm agrees to give Roode the next title shot. So 2 weeks after capturing the title, all history comes together as James Storm defends against Bobby Roode. During the match, Bobby Roode turns heel by smashing a bottle over Storm's head and capturing the belt, ending Beer Money and starting the Selfish Generation. It was very well done. At the time I was angry, but hindsight is a wonderful thing like a punch to the gut. I can look back at this now and see that the route they took cemented Roode as a horrible human being who would destroy his best friend's dreams and didn't care who else he screwed. Annoyingly, despite all the fanfare between the two to have a proper rematch, it didn't happen for a long time, which still irks me to this day. The thing is about Roode though, it's almost like watching the rise was more fun than what followed. Roode went on to have a record-breaking world title reign, holding the belt for 256 days, but most of his wins were fluky and he became a chicken shit heel. All of his matches were solid to good, but at the same time I struggle to name a single amazing Robert Roode match. Why is that? By the end of this title reign, he was definitely a main eventer after defending against everybody from Sting to Kurt Angle, Jeff Hardy to AJ Styles. And of course, he did have one proper eventual title defense against James Storm in a cage, but it was months after their original feud, and even that ended in an irritating way when Storm accidentally superkicked Roode out of the cage. And for some reason, coming that close didn't qualify Storm for any sort of rematch. The title reign eventually came to an end due to Austin Aries, who was experiencing something of a major push up the card himself. When he beat Roode, it was described as a fluke victory at the time, but after a while it was clear it wasn't a fluke, and Roode helped create a fresh new main eventer in TNA. Roode and Aries also had amazing chemistry on the mic. They were always bickering and trying to out-heel each other, very entertaining. Due to the entertainment we were getting from them, TNA made the decision to team them up.
Two sides! Look how durable mine is. I don't care about two sides. We're getting a baby gap.
That is durable, like more durable than Hogan shirts I've ever been.
I know, why do they always rip?
I don't know. Okay, because you were the longest reigning, most dominant world heavyweight champion in the history of this company. History. I mean history. And then I beat you. Wait a minute.
They captured the tag belts together, making Roode a 5-time tag team champion. It was good, but sometimes it got a bit too close to licking internet wrestling fans on the ass. Lots of inside jokes and terms being used.
It kind of seems like this company is taking a step 10 years in the past. Now you got people like Rob Van Dam as the X Division champion, Devon, a member of Aces and Eights, as the television champion, Chavo and Hernandez as the tag team champions, and then of course there's the Golden Child.
It's Double J, Jeff Jarrett.
It did get a bit silly, but it was fun watching them trying to out-cheat each other in a bid to impress each other. Roode also formed a new faction called Ego with his friends Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels. He kicked around the main events for the next couple of years as the company shrank and shrank. He didn't actually capture the world title for the second time until the end of 2014 when he beat fellow Bobby Lashley. He dropped the belt back to him a couple of months later, so this was nothing like his first record-setting title reign. In fact, this title reign couldn't have been much worse. With TNA switching to the new TV station, I guess they thought a title change on the first show would hook the viewer. So Roode lost his second heavyweight title on his very first defense. As the TNA show got worse and more small time, Roode became somewhat of a locker room leader. TNA made this clear with their opening on their debut episode of Destination America, where Roode was seen giving speeches to the locker room.
Tonight we show the world why we are the greatest professional wrestlers anywhere. And I am proud to be a part of this locker room. Let's do this tonight, guys. Let's do it!
It was a depressing year where talents were disappearing from the company. Even James Storm had left to take a shot at the WWE, but somehow, according to reports, TNA offered him more money and Storm came back. TNA switched to an even smaller TV station after a year, so they did the only logical thing that they could do at this point, which was reforming Beer Money. It seemed like a good move, and they had a funny segment where Roode and Storm apologised to each other for the past, even though it was all Roode's fault. It wasn't the same though, and it felt a bit forced at this point. Maybe it was the depressing surroundings of the company at the time. Maybe it was the lack of credible opponents. Maybe it was that there was no longer any optimism for the product. Most of you didn't even watch past when Styles left. They managed to have one more tag team title reign before Roode left the company, giving Beer Money 5 titles together. At this point, it was crazy he'd stuck with them so long. Almost everybody else had abandoned ship at this point. He left TNA in March 2016, ending his 12-year stay at the company, and he would never come back again. Just a couple of weeks later, he turned up on NXT, and he had a decent mid-card career for himself in the WWE. I think perhaps we could have hoped for a tiny bit more out of him, but at the same time, he may have jumped a little bit too late at the age of 40. Roode was at his peak in 2011. He still managed to capture the NXT title, the US title, and the tag titles twice. Not bad, alongside his TNA accomplishments with his 6 TNA tag titles, 2 NWA tag titles, and his 2 heavyweight titles. So I finished making this video, and then I realised that Roode won another title. The King of the Mountain title. But then I realised nobody cares. So I won't be talking about that anymore past this. Shut up or I'll smack you one. Roode gave his reason for leaving TNA as mostly down to budget cuts. The cuts made the taping schedule change, and they were doing all the shows over a short period, and then he had nothing to do for the rest of the month. They were no longer doing house shows either. He felt that his career was in a rut, and he just started to hate wrestling. Roode wrestled his final WWE match in June 2022 against Omos on a house show. He landed badly on a move and aggravated his neck injury, which dates back to 2012. Although he works as a backstage producer for WWE and he is cleared to wrestle, the man said he is not having an in-ring return. It's simply not going to happen. Bobby Roode's career is a really hard one to judge. He never got to have a world title reign with TNA at their hottest with Roode as a face. All his heel matches, he was booked like a lucky chicken shit. The Selfish Generation stuff was good and believable, but it got old quickly when you realised that there was nothing else to it. The matches were all solid, if forgettable. 2010 or 2011 was peak Bobby Roode because watching him smash through the glass ceiling at TNA was incredible. I often hear comparisons to Triple H, and that's fairly accurate to me. On his own, he's a solid, reliable, B-tier player, but with the right partner you could get some magic out of him. He wasn't capable of the flashy stuff, but he was easy to hate, he did have a good look, a good promo, and was the definition of an all-rounder. I often wonder where he would have ended up if WWE had signed him in the earlier days. But in TNA, nobody could hold this man back in his career, and if you don't agree with that, I'll give you something to fear.